Welcome back 3D modelers. This time around we're doing some crates and barrels, which are the cornerstone of like every video game ever. So we're going to start off, we're in Blender 2.8.2.82a I believe, and we're going to create a simple crate. So we've got our default Blender file open here. We start with a cube right away. I've got a cool little plug-in over here called Screencast Keys, so you'll be able to see all the keystrokes and mouse movements here in orange in the corner. So let's get started. We've got our cube. I'm going to go ahead and hit tab and go into edit mode, and 3 to go into face mode, and then I'm going to inset some faces here. So I'm going to drag those down, and right off the bat it looks like it's not happening, but I'm going to go to my control here and just play with this. So we want to make sure that we're insetting individual faces, and now we can see, yep, that looks like more what we want to do. Play with the thickness and make sure it looks the way you want it to. You can have really, it's a little too thick for any crate, but you can make it really look like a crate that'll be easily broken because the frame doesn't look very big, or you can kind of just play with the thickness there until it looks the way you want it to. I'm going to go kind of a medium-ish there. We'll call that good. And now I'm going to go ahead and hit 1 to go into vertex mode, and I'm going to start connecting some vertices here. So I'm going to take these two, and I don't want to do this at the top and the bottom, but all the way around on the 4 sides. I want to create kind of a bar, like a support bar, to help this crate hold together, because I know how you people do in your video games. You just break these things all up. So with my 2 vertices selected, I'm going to come up here to vertex, and I want to connect these vertex paths. And cool little preview here, for the next time I can just hit J. So I'm going to, there we go, got a new edge between those vertices. I'm going to do another one over here, and then just hit J. Yep, there's a new hotkey for that. Look at that, we're learning. And again, we're just going to do the 4 sides, and we'll leave the top and bottom alone for now. So J, and we connect those. All right, next thing I want to do is to take this line now and make it more of a plank shape. So I'm going to hit 2 to go to edge mode. I'm going to do all these at once. I'm going to grab 1, 2, 3, 4 of these. If I preview down here at the bottom, I can see how many edges I've got selected. I've got 4 of 64 edges selected. That's how many I expect to have. So I'm going to go to edges and bevel these edges and just start to pull on those. And again, it didn't do anything in the window, but I'm just going to play with the offset here now that I've got this pop-up. And that looks about right. I'm not sure if I want it too much thicker than the actual frame, so I'm going to come down a little bit. Just, you know, eyeball it. Good enough. All right. So now, if I come out here, I've got this weird face here, and it would work if I was just going to inset the triangular patterns, but I want this to look a little more complex, like the frame on the outer part is sticking out further than this support bar, and then these triangles in the middle further in even than that. So I want to change where this vertex is at. I'm going to hit 1, and I want to take this vertex and move it down to kind of where it was to begin with. So if I grab my move tool, as you can see, moving that into space by eyeballing it would be a little tough. I mean, I could shift and middle mouse. There's a control middle mouse, alt middle mouse. What am I looking for? I could go into an orthographic view and get this right on there and all that, but that'd be just a pain in the buns to do that for all of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a cool feature that Blender has that we may not have talked about yet. It'd be my snapping. So I'm going to turn this snap on right up here, this magnet looking dude, and I want to snap to edges. And so with that on, as I'm moving things, once I start moving along an axis, and then if I hover my mouse over the edge that I want it to snap to, it'll pop right there. So I'm going to move over on the X here, and then put my mouse on this edge, and it's going to snap right in line with that. I'm going to do that the same for the Z axis. Pop it to that edge, and now it's right back where it started from. So I'm going to keep moving around, and I'm just going to move all of these into place using my snapping tool. Again on the Y. So that snapping tool is super convenient when you want to line things up. Not always necessary, but good for the case we've got going here. All right, so we've got all those back into place. And we've got these extra edges here. They're not hurting anything, but I don't want them there. So I'm going to go hit 2, get into edge mode. I'm going to grab all of these. I'm going to turn my move tool off so I don't accidentally mess something up. I'm just going to grab all of these edges. Shift click, okay, and should have 8 of those. Yep, looks like 8. So I'm going to hit X, which is delete. And I could just delete or whatever, but whoop, hovered right off of it. But what I want to do is dissolve these edges. And that gets rid of them without messing up any faces, and it merges these 2 faces, or 3 faces in this case, together. So I'm just going to dissolve those edges. Now this is one clean face with like 6 vertices, but we're going to go with it. All right, so now I've got my lines in place, and I can start doing what I want to do with this crate and do some extruding and really give this some shape. So I'm going to go hit 3, go to face mode, or I can just come up here to go back and forth. And I'm going to grab all of these to start with. So 3 faces per the 4 sides should be 12, if I'm remembering my math correctly. Yep, got 12 faces selected, and I'm going to use my extrude tool here. So we've got different extrudes here. Extrude region, we'll try and extrude them all together. Extrude individual might not work in this case because we've got 3 faces together and I don't want them to extrude completely individually. And then of course extrude to cursor just pops out to where your little 3D cursor in the middle is at. So I want to extrude along normals. So I'm going to extrude along normals and just kind of pull these in. And so my plan is I don't want to go in very far. I just want to go in as far as that support bar is going to be. So just a little bit. And it looks like that offset was at 0.0391, whatever. I'm going to type something in, 0.03. That's it, just a little bit. Okay, and then turn that extrude tool off, and I'm going to go ahead and grab now just the triangles. And we're going to go in further. Got all 8 of those selected. I'm going to extrude again. In this case, they're all separate, so I could just do extrude individual, but at this point it doesn't matter. So I'm going to extrude and come in some more-ish. And that's at 0.04, so we did 0.03 before. Let's just do 0.05 and call it an even 0.08. All right. And so we're not going too far in because I'm going to zoom in here. Inside the cube, I don't want these faces overlapping each other, right? If we push them too far in, they're going to kind of get in each other's space. So I don't want that. I'm going to zoom out. So I've went 0.03 and then 0.05 for the rest of it. I'm going to make it 0.07. All right. So those are going in for an even 0.1. And then we've got some nice thickness to these bars. And I still don't think that's too far. Yeah, that'll work out. All right, good. So we've got that part done. And I want to take my top faces in. About the same amount. So I'm going to hit extrude, pull those down, and then we want those at, let's just say 0.1 to match the complete extrusion of the other ones. And it looks good. Click that off and hit tab, and now I've got the shape of my crate. So come back real quick and we will UV unwrap and texture this guy, and then get him ready for exporting as an FBX. Okay, we're back in Blender. Here's our file as we had left off. While I was off, I went ahead and launched Photoshop because that takes slightly forever to do. So we've got our cube here. Let me just go ahead and double check my screencast keys here. All right, that's going good. So we've got our cube that's now turned into a crate. We did all of our modeling, and we need to UV unwrap this guy and get him ready for some textures. So I'm going to pop over here to the UV editing tab, and once again I'm going to go ahead and turn on that screencast thing because he seems to just want to be on the tab that we're in, and he only works in 3D, so good luck on the 2D view. Anyway, so we've got our cube, and I'm just going to go ahead and select all of this, and we can see what this UV unwrap looks like. So since we started with a cube, we get the default kind of a cross pattern. It takes all 6 sides and folds it out like the old paper craft stuff we used to do. So here's what it looks like just by default, because this is what we did to it. We've got vertices over the top of each other. We've got these things out of place right here because when we snap that back into place, we weren't really modifying the model itself, so I didn't bother modifying the UV. So if we try to texture this right now, the inner pieces right here, just try and select one of these, right? That would just be a line. So no matter how nice our texture was, it would just stretch it across one line right there. Things wouldn't look good. Things would stretch weird. We can see we've already got some weird shape here to this. This would be stretched out more than it should. Things just wouldn't look good. So we can't use this. We've changed our model. We need a new UV unwrap. So I'm going to go ahead and show you first the Smart UV Project. So if I hit U over here with all of my model selected, hit U, I can show you the Smart UV Project and leave all those at default. And again, we've got everything stretched out nicely, fitting into our UV bounds. Things look good. We've got all of our pieces here, but hit A again. But if we do this, we've got to texture each and every little piece, right? So this side and this, all 6 of these sides here. I'm gonna have to texture each triangle separately. Things are not facing the way I want them to anyway. Some of these are up and down. Some of these triangles are off different shapes. So if I had a really, really intricate texture, like every bit of this crate was going to be very different on every piece of surface, then this would be a good unwrap. I could deal with this in Photoshop or whatever my texturing tool was. But I think we can make this easier because for my purposes right now, this is a plain wooden crate. I just need it to look good. So it would be nice if I could just texture one side and have it all work right. Well, guess what? Thank you, Blender. There's a way. So I'm going to go ahead and hit U again. And there's a cube projection I can use down here as well. I can go up here and hit UV. Same tools are there. So cube projection, and look at that. That's almost exactly what we want. Everything's in the right place. They're proportionally sized to each other and laid out nicely. So kind of like that first one, all these pieces are where they're supposed to be. But then the pieces that were lines in our original unwrap, they have a nice home too. They're living up here where the wood panels are at. So looks pretty good overall. I'm gonna hit A. I do notice some weirdness here, right? So my crate has these diagonal bars, like a forward slash going all the way around on all sides, and that looks good. Here it's taken half of them and crossed them, so they're like, it's like an X instead of just this bar. I'm going to go ahead and show you some fine-tuning of the UV by trying to fix some of these. So these look good. That's lined up with what my model's doing. That one's fine. This side and this side are not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab these faces. So all of these, and there's all over the top of each other here, and I want to rotate those. So I can come to my UV here, and there's a transform tool, or I've got my transform tools down the side. So I can say rotate this, but nothing's actually selected in my UV panel, even though the faces are selected in my 3D view. So I couldn't rotate anything. But if I hit A, now all of the UVs that I have selected via this 3D view are selected here, and I can rotate them. Looks like my snapping's still on, but I don't know what I have to snap to except increments, vertexes. We'll try that. See if that works along the rotate. And yeah, it's hard to even grab anything this way. So I'm going to turn off that snapping tool, which was so helpful in modeling. I'm just going to rotate this guy right now. So we'll do this. Eyeball it, get it close enough. But what's cool is my little pop-up guy dialog comes up here, and I can fine-tune. So I'm going to go to -90. Now we're right on the money. And let me just double check. Hit A in here. Everything looks like it's lined up nicely. So this will work really well for what I want it to do, except for these bars right here. So if I give a wood grain to this and say the wood grain's going up and down, that's going to look good for these panels. It might look good for these planks that I'm going to put in here, but the wood grain also going up and down on the diagonal piece is going to kind of break our illusion here. So I'm going to grab this face, actually all of these faces, and I'm going to tuck them up where this panel's at, so that they're getting the same wood grain strokes and directions as everything else. So I've got all those selected. I'm going to hit A over here again and rotate that guy. Whoop, try it again. Rotate him over and again fine tune here. So he was at, we just need to go by -45 because he's already angled. So that'll get him at his 90 and slide him up. But we're still going to have a problem where we've got this overlap here. So I need to scale him down. And another thing I see I'm going to need is, if I go ahead and select everything here again, right? When I break these pieces of my 4 pieces of frame out and have them going different directions, and maybe even have a line in here that's going to cut right through the middle of this plank face. So let me grab those once more. And I'm just going to scale them down a little bit. If we had very much detail on here, things being out of scale would be noticeable, but it's just going to be a wood grain, and so it'll just look a little off, but maybe we won't even notice. So I'm going to scale this down. Whoa, not that much. That'll be noticeable. And I want to get it inside where I imagine these 45-degree lines are going to be. So that's probably enough, and then I'll move them up. And I think that's going to be fine. Let me come out here and hit A. And those are nicely placed inside this. I think everything's going to work out. So we've got all of our triangles in place. Our top and bottom panels. Those guys live up there. All my little wood pieces are going to be down here where we've got wood grains all going the same way. And this is going to work. So I like it. I'm going to hit A, get all this stuff. A again over here. And I need to save this out. So I'm going to go to UV, and I need to export this UV layout. And the first thing I notice is it's going to dump it into my Blender folder just full of nonsense, and I don't like that. I need to do something about this. So let me save my Blender file. I'm going to go ahead and save as. And this is going to give me this nice little dialog, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder inside of my Blender folder just for this. And so we're going to call this crates and barrels. Save in here, and this will be crates 2020. All right, so we've saved our file, and when I went to go save that as my export, right now it's where I want it to be, but I notice it's still called cube. So cancel that again, and let me just name this guy because cube is not helpful. I'm going to call it crate. I want to call it crate 01 because I might have some variance in this scene later. So this will be crate 01, And now if I go to export this UV layout, it's in the folder I want it in, and it's all set to be called Crate 01, and it looks good. I'm going to change this to a 2K instead of a 1K resolution, so 2048 by 2048. And that all looks good. Yeah, we want all the UVs, and I'm just going to make sure that I tag this Crate 01 UV Unwrap, just so I know what's what later. All right, so I'm going to export this UV layout, and now I've got a PNG sitting in that folder, so I'm going to pop back over to Photoshop here and go looking for it. And we see, pop over to my Blender folder and Crates and Barrels 2020, and here's my Crate 01 UV Unwrap. So let me open that guy up, and here it is. I've got some grid lines on here for use later. I'm just going to go ahead and turn those off. Turn off the extras. So this is my outline. This will be helpful for picking out pieces of board to texture certain ways. And I'll start this really quick, and then we're going to fade out and come back with the texture completed, because spend too much time in Photoshop, people are going to get bored and go to sleep. I can get pretty picky and OCD in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just going to name this outline. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm just going to pick some brown colors, and I'll probably switch this up later, but just as a reminder of how we do this. Those are almost different enough. Filter and render, and I'm just going to create some fibers. So very nice. I've got some variance, I've got some strength in there, randomize that up. And there's the start of my texture. So I've got a wood base and this outline, and I'll pop back in just a second and show you what I ended up doing with this. All right, we're back in Photoshop. Here's where we left off, and I've created all these other layers in the meantime. So I've got my wood grain here, and I went ahead and added a bunch of stuff to it. So I'm going to go pop up here and turn off the outline for now, and show you what we built. So I took this wood grain. I actually took a different wood grain than this. Made a kind of a stronger copy of the wood grain, and I created some beams here. I used the outline to cut out these shapes of the tops and the bottom boards, and I've got that. You can see that here, and I added this effect to it, this stroke, so that we've got like a nice dark defining line around it. And there's my top and bottom boards. I did the same thing. I took the same wood grain, made a copy of it, and flipped it over sideways for my sideways beams here. So turn that effect on. You can see I've got this wood grain that goes this way, and this one that goes up and down, and I've got a nice wood grain in the middle. So we framed in our crate. Then I scrolled down here, and I've created these lines. Just created some simple single pixel black lines through here, and I added some effects to it. So I created a bevel and emboss effect over the top of that, so that it looks like it's kind of pushed down in there, and I'll go ahead and open up those effects and show those to you. So here's our bevel and emboss. It's an outer bevel, so on my 1 pixel line, this is going 10 out of it, and it's a push down bevel, so it just gives us that nice look. And then I also added a stroke to this. I'll just turn it on and off here, and it just kind of darkened where that line was. So again, it just gave me some more definition. We're kind of quasi-real, quasi-cartoon here. So now we've got our crate, but I wanted to do more with it. So I popped out to our assignment page and grabbed our logo for DET, our department, and I took out the black part of it, masked that out, and copied it and rotated it. And now I've got this stamp here. And so you can see on this layer, I've set the layer blend mode to multiply, and then pulled the fill down to 64. And so without that, I'm just turn those back, right? It's just a black stencil, but by pulling the fill down and then changing it to multiply, we just kind of got a better look. We can see the wood grain poking through. it looks like some ink had been stamped onto this wood. I did the same thing in red, same layer effects. So now I've got a decorated crate. You can put whatever logos you want on there, advertise toilet paper or whatever else is topical and is going on. And so that looks pretty good. And then I added some nails. So I just took up my elliptical marquee tool here. If you hold down shift, you get a perfect circle, and I just made some circles and copied them all around and then added some more layer effects to them. So here I have added another bevel and emboss, this time an inner bevel, so it looks like it's kind of rounded out. Played a lot with the size and the soften and the contour, and so that looks really good. And there's Dr. Burton playing Elder Scrolls Skyrim again. Does that guy do any work? And here is, yeah, so I did the bevel. I did some color overlay because the circles were black, and I wanted to kind of pull it back a little bit and make it kind of a darker gray. So I got that effect. Then I added this outer glow, which is kind of subtle, but without it, you can see the nails just kind of like terminate. And this outer glow just kind of gives them either a shadow or like where they're kind of denting into the wood and just more definition. So this ended up being my completed texture. Again, since we laid out our UV thusly, I was able to basically texture one side and get everything I needed. I'm noticing that it looks like I didn't move these nails here enough. They're going to kind of pop over the top of this particular, actually all of them, they're all in the same spot. They're going to go over the top of this piece of wood. So let me just go into my nails really quick and fix that. So this one needs to come out and that one needs to come out. So let me do that. So I'm going to turn off my outline and go to nails. Was not planning on doing fixing while we're in here, but this is the world we're in. So I'm going to move that guy up a little bit. And then I'm going to grab this one. Just on the nail layer. And move him over a little bit. All right. And now neither one of them are inside my support beam plank. So Control D, deselect that. Again, make sure you turn your outlines off before you export your textures because your texture will look just like this and So I'm going to turn that off. Go ahead and make sure I resave this. I've saved this as a Photoshop file right in my same folder. I'm going to save. Yeah, replace it. It's the same one. But I did move those bolts. And I'm going to go ahead now and go to export and quick export as PNG. And so now I've got my crate 01 texture.png. Save that again right into that same folder, and we'll pop back to Blender. All right, we've seen all the UV. We trust the unwrap, so I'm going to pop over here to layout and make sure screencast dude's on. Okay. And hit N because we don't need that guy anymore. All right, so with my guy selected, I'm going to pop down here to the material tab, material properties, and he's got a base material on it, but I'm going to create a new one. So I'm going to create a new material, and again, new here, and so this is called material 01. I'm going to go ahead and rename that. This will be our crate material. And I'm going to come down to the base color, which is where I want to insert my new image. So click the little dot, and I want to do an image texture right here. And we get this cool dialog, and we hit open, and look, there is our crate 01 texture.png. Perfect. So I'm going to open that up. And you can see a preview here of our crate material. So that's looking at least not white anymore. I'm going to come over here, and in my view, we've got, of course, our wireframe, our solid, and then our material view. But our crate still has the original material on it. So I can hit Tab and go into Edit Mode. Go ahead and hit A again to make sure everything's selected. And with my new crate material selected here, I'll just click Assign. And now you can see here's our material. And it doesn't look too bad. Looks like we had some mirroring going on in the back. We'll just ignore that. And this looks pretty good. I did want to point something out. So now I've got two materials here. They both follow the same UV as before, but I can assign different materials to different faces, as we've done in other software. So I can select this face. Just going to kind of pan around and pretend that I've got a white crate frame on my wooden inner. So you can go down here, hit create material and assign, and now I've just got my crate material on the inner parts and all the beams are white. Why would you want to do that? Well, I mean, the white beams are done, but what if we had metallic beams? That could look pretty cool. One of those crates that would take forever in your game to get through and get the ammo out of. So that's how we can assign different materials to different faces. So I'm going to pop back here and just make sure that I assign everything to this. Get it back looking good. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to actually try and create a render of this. So before we take off, all right, that's on. I want to come up here, and this is a 2x2 meter crate because that's our usual size. So I'm going to move this up by 1, and it should be sitting right on the plane, right on the ground plane. Good, good. I'm going to actually create a plane. So I'm going to add a plane underneath it and scale that boy out. Looks good, and now let's see what all this looks like together. So we are on the material mode, and get that guy out of the way. And this next one is our rendered mode. And so here we are. This should be the Eevee renderer. Looks really good. We can see we've got our wood grain for that beam that we moved up is now at a 45-degree angle because we moved it up to where this guy was, and so that looks a lot better. All of our grains for the little bits and pieces of the inner pieces where we extruded look really good. And this is just the color. Let me play with the renderer a little bit. Come over here to the cycles renderer. And that looks really good. One final thing before we go, I do want to play with rendering an image. And so if I come to my view and cameras and my active camera, because I've got a camera in the scene, this is what the camera sees, and that's nice-ish, but I'd like to frame that better. So I middle mouse click to get out of that. Of course, there's my camera hovering in the distance, and I can kind of zoom in and pan around. Let me select this guy, and I will say, let's go ahead and frame the selected object. It's a little too close. There's a nice view, and view, align view. I'm going to align my camera to this view, and looks pretty good. Just cutting off the bottom a little bit, so I'm going to keep playing with it. Grab my camera, I'm going to move it. I'm going to move it on its local. So just pull it back on the Z, so I'm just zooming out a little bit. We'll go back to that camera. That looks better. Still need to zoom out some more. I'm just fine-tuning for hero rendering here. I might want to put this on my portfolio. Almost kind of peer down the camera lens there and see what that looks like. I can flip to it. There we go. That looks pretty nice. So I've already set up to the cycles renderer, which is our nicest one. I can render an image. So in a relatively short amount of time, we modeled, we looked at the UV unwrap, some of the different UV unwrap settings that we can get just out of the box with the Smart UV Project and the cubic projection. We fine-tuned that to make sure that all of our stuff was facing the right way as far as our wood grains went. Exported the UV, played some in Photoshop, and we're able to come back and add that texture to a material, and now we're getting a really nice render out of Blender and the Cycles renderer. So I hope you enjoyed this. You've got a good start for your crates and barrels project. Lots more crates and barrels to create, so I hope you have fun with it.